All right, I'm presenting my multimodal presentation on the Indus Valley Civilization and the decline. I am Islamic Qureshi, and I am in EUB353 in 2021. So, how did climate change lead to the 200-year decline and collapse of the Indus Valley Civilization? This is what we're researching today. This presentation investigates the evidence around climate change being the key factor into the decline of the Indus peoples, specifically into the civilization centers of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. Historical analysis and interpretation of archaeological sources from the Indus are secondary sources from academic journals that inform this argument. I chose this because my father is from Karachi, and as you can see here, that is in the country of Pakistan that also hosted the Harappan civilizations. So I always spent time hearing about this ancient history of Pakistan. What we know from the Indus peoples is that they were believed to have settled on the Indus River around 3,000 years before Chronic Era. And during the Bronze Age, they had started to build cities and settlements. Written evidence that remains cannot be translated, therefore, there's no way of knowing what they were saying in their archaeological sources. The collapse is believed to have taken place over 200 years, and there's no exact reason known why. Over the 500 years of their height or mature civilization, the Indus had hundreds of small cities in proximity and believed to have had an average population of 10,000 people each city, meaning that there was possibly a population of 5 million people in Pakistan during the Bronze Age. And that was larger than the Egyptian or Mesopotamian empires at the time. In Mohenjo-Daro, as mentioned, there was lots of excavation done over the last 200 years that informs our understanding of these people. We know that it was a capital city and that they were the most advanced technologically in terms of what they built and how their city served their people with the likes of there being a great bath to be clean in, and this large structure here being a food mound, a granary, so that they could keep food over the change of seasons. And this is a icon of a priest king, perhaps. We can see this from his crown here and the effort and design that went into his statue here being made. These come from John Canoyer, a significant researcher of the Harappan people. We can use this evidence to form understanding from archaeological and sociological understanding. The Harappan, among their findings were small idols believed to represent animals and hybrids that were worshipped. There was accessories and jewelry, Bronze Age technology, i.e., like knives, chisels, pottery, the community bath, the irrigation, and the stockhouses, food. What they didn't find, however, was the abundance of weapons of warfare technology. So, assumably, these were a peaceful people. Perhaps some say they were egalitarian in nature. There were no great palaces, meaning that people lived fairly equally, and significant temples that were the centers. There were no great temples that were the centers of society, rather, but an important element of the city, but not overreaching their authority to widely control all its people. In the analysis of primary and secondary sources, it can be stated that archaeological evidence brought forth indicates a high-level Bronze Age civilization that the Harappans had executed. It can be implied from their most massive structure being a granary that they expected the turning of seasons to be tough and that they would stockpile their food to survive. As primary evidence, it is of paramount usefulness and relevance to the topic. The granary in particular being elevated indicates a measure executed to combat the frequent flooding of the Indus River. Robert L.R. Raikes, in his 1964 The End of the Ancient Cities of the Indus journal, corroborates this information and records that carbon dating in Mohenjo-Daro reveals 7 major floods that had struck the city burying it in over 30 feet of silt. In the same journal, he refers to Sani 1956, who discovered a shift in tectonic plates at the Himalayan fault line, and that major tectonic movements have partially accounted to their decline. Rake's 1964 journal can be trusted as an academic secondary source, however, is limited due to its time of publication, as more recent technologies and knowledge contribute now to a greater understanding of the Harappan people. But more primary evidence from the site is that of this drain and this mound, as recorded in Kagoya's photographs. He mentions that they were built as a way to dispose of rainwater and sewage, and that this ancient evidence, along with the grid-like town planning seen in the E-mound here, reflects how the Harappan people once managed the flooding of their land and planned their city accordingly. Raikes points to the flooding occurring during the height of their civilization, as they relied on it to live on. However, what was believed to have driven the Harappan people away from their cities was the climate change from the constant flooding and to drought, famine, and disease, which can be attributed to the shift in tectonic plates, as it meant that seawater was pushed further inland, and thus this made the crops, this gave the crops salinity and devastated the crop yield. And in Harappa, we have here some evidence of their technology and skills. The decline, however, most notable historians collectively agree and acknowledge that climate change and geomorphic events accentuated the decline of the Indus. Climate change as a result of major tectonic shifts in the area meant that streams of the Indus River that would normally flood were cut off. Agriculture in the area dissipated, and disease and famine took over, forcing gradual migration, according to Shenji, 1990. Malaria and cholera were prevalent in the bones, as you can see here, what people found buried together, but with no evident slaughter wounds. This does not prove a invasion theory, but instead that of a endemic, this being a famine that took out lots of the population, and thus would have resulted in economic collapse, which would have disrupted the ability to effectively govern a population. And because of this, migrants moved east into the Saraswati River into Sindh. Historians have ruled out the possibility of Max Muller's Aryan invasion theory, as there just isn't sufficient archaeological evidence to suggest a widespread, gradual invasion of the Aryan people. They did move over eventually, but that was not until 500 years after the cities were abandoned. So in summary, an article from the Annals of Bandaraka and the decline of the Indus civilization from Shenji reflects and corroborates the study of Rake's 1964, suggesting his theory remains an unconvincing explanation and builds upon it by adding scholarly literature from Sani 1956, his own, and Dale's 1966 to at least consolidate indisputable theories brought forth by geohistorians. Shenji articulately points to the indisputable evidence that tectonic shift in the areas of Balochistan and southern Pakistan increased the sea level, resulting in terrible crop yields and famine, and that widespread malaria found in corpses at Mohenjo Daro and Harappa indicate an outbreak that coincides with the drought towards the end of the Harappan period. Cholera, also found in human remains, is also believed to have been transmitted by the irrigation system if maintenance would not have been executed. So the gradual immigration of the Harappan people happened over 200 years as they moved east into Sindh, and Robertson 2015 summarizes that the decline of the Indus authority seems to have been accentuated by a change in the river systems, resulting in famine, drought, and economic collapse. Historians, through time, come to a number of ideas that result in the end of the civilization, including one now widely disproven, being of the Indo-Aryan invasion theory, put forth by Western scholars. But as said before, this does not stand to modern standards. So really, in great conclusion, it can only be stated that with the nature of interpreting historical evidence being forever vague, there is still no concrete, widely accepted single theory that stands to explain the decline of the Indus. What can be stated, however, is that the study of climate change and natural disaster in the region, as found in Reich's 1964, Sarni's 1956, Dale's 1966, and Robertson 2015s, corroborate and reflect the accepted understanding that the slow abandonment of the Harappan cities is a result of climate change, natural and economic disaster in the region that occurred over the end of the mature Harappan period. And just to reflect on this assignment, being multimodal, I needed to do a lot of research to go into the Indus people, and knowing that there was no translated sources from the time, it was all up to interpretation, which meant that everything I'm saying is still in the air. It's still, there's no concrete evidence yet that this is the exact reason why. Which isn't different from an assignment I did before on the Indian Vedic people in high school. So I knew that by doing archaeological evidence, it had to be up to interpretation. So I did have to rely on secondary sources for a lot of my information and arguments. Thankfully, by pooling together our sources in the class with some classmates, we're able to pick out what would be the most useful, relevant, and reliable sources. And my skills of historical analysis were needed to select an accurate, reliable, and useful sources relevant to the topic. An issue occurred where information in academic articles could be too specific when I may have needed a more brief description. But that would have been from a non-academic source, so choosing them was quite hard. I went into this knowing that by using Satius and Morton's 2012, the Big Six historical thinking concepts, it would frame my inquiry into the topic, giving me the ability to present an argument that has considerations of the nature of the evidence provided. And I think for future practice, it would be a great idea to frame my PowerPoint prior and constructing a sounder flow of evidence and analysis to enhance my argument. To use SiteWrite with more caution, as you'll see, and choosing an inquiry topic with sounder conclusions, more research that will yield a more conclusive result. As it stands, theories on the Indus are still in the air, and it wouldn't hurt to engage more with class content, as I would have more of an idea as to what exactly I would do. And that is all. This is that's my reference list, and it's over. Thank you for watching.